So thank you very much. It's me again, and I will have here also my colleagues Eduardo and Eudaldo, who also work in the team very hard to have this application. They will be here, and they will be doing the workshop with me right after this session. This session is going to be like a summary of the workshop, so that even if you don't have the time to go through all the exercises, at least you can learn how to extend this application, what are the extension points, and then you could follow the workshop at home with all the materials. Everything is available. If you like very much this session, this is like this introduction, and if you want to go deeper and do it yourself, right afterwards we have the full workshop in which we will do all these exercises, and we will help you one by one to make sure it works for you and you have all the environment set up and you can make everything work and develop all these things we're going to develop here. And these two guys will be helping me in this workshop, and they will be helping you to do anything you may need. So again, I showed you before the app, but the cool thing is, again, as we do in Liferay, it's not only an app, but it's mainly a framework. It's a framework so that everyone can do whatever they want and to fit this app to your needs. And this time, we actually spent a lot of time making sure we provided like the things, the requirements we thought were the most common requirements, so that the app is already like an app and it's very usable and it has a lot of features. But the truth is, we always thought it as a framework because we knew it would be impossible for us to find all the requirements you will have in your projects. We know you will always have different rules which are very specific to your customer, to your needs, or to your project. And for that reason, we always had in mind that this had to be a very extensible framework. And even though we wanted to build an app, it had to be extremely extensible in any way possible. And that was one of the main reasons we thought we had to change the technology. If we had taken the traditional approach of building a Liferay plugin, as you know, the Liferay plugins are very cool, but usually you cannot extend easily the Liferay plugins. Okay? They are ways of extending the Liferay platform, but there are no easy ways to extend the Liferay extensions. And there are some mechanisms, but they are not very useful for our situation. So for this reason, we needed something different, and then we asked the platform guys what we can do, and they told us, well, in Liferay 6.2 we have OSGI, and that's amazing. We haven't played a lot with it yet, so it's kind of beta, but you may enjoy it a lot, and it will provide you the flexibility you need to have one app which is extensible by other apps. So that's exactly what we wanted, so we gave it a try, and we are very happy about it. And you will see more and more about OSGI in all these sessions. And this is the first app which is completely built following the new development paradigm for Liferay 7, following all the OSGI modularity and all these techniques. And you will learn more and more about it all this symposium. And this is what we are going to try to do mainly in the workshop. I will go quicker here in this session about how to install the application and setting up the plugins SDK for this application, how to create different rules, tracking actions and reports, and how to do all these things. In order to install the application, it's very simple. You just start your bundle, any 6.2, either CE, EE, any service package, okay. And then you go to the marketplace. In the control panel, you can go to the store, and then you can just install audience targeting. And it will require you to reinstall the server because of the OSGI. This won't happen on Liferay 7, but in 6.2, you still need to restart the server the first time, only the first time you install this app. And all the examples I'm going to show you today are here in this URL in GitHub, so you can actually, and they are made commit by commit explaining what we are doing, so you can actually follow the whole workshop and the whole session just in this GitHub repo. And all the project is open source. So if you want to create a new rule, which is very similar to one that we already have, you can just go there, copy our rule, and then make your changes. So everything is open source, and you can get everything on GitHub. So the first part we wanted to show is how to develop new rule types. Okay, so you've seen this UI already, in which we have many rules for defining what is a user segment, how to segment our users. And the coolest thing is that each of those that you're seeing here is a separated plugin for Liferay. So in the past, you know, Liferay were either a portlet, a hook, or a theme, or a template. So now here, a plugin for Liferay is just a rule for this segmentation of users. So this is what OSGI brings, like many different kinds of plugins in the future. And they can be deployed individually, they can be undeployed, so you could have only the rules that you want there. You could add more, and you could deliver each of those as an independent app in the marketplace, which is something very powerful, because I hope in the next month we will see many apps in the marketplace which are just extensions or new rules for audience targeting, for example. So the one we wanted to do in this workshop, which we will do later step by step, is a weather rule. And it's very common. It can sound weird, like a weather rule. What is that for? So it's very common in the industry. We heard about it. So for example, if you have the McDonald's app in your phone, it shows some bonuses, like some offers, like so depending on your city where you are, if it's raining, it will offer you some promotion for hamburgers, and if it's a sunny day, it will give you some promotions for ice cream, depending on the weather in your city where you are currently at. And the same happens with some clothes stores like Decathlon. If you know Decathlon, when you go to their website, if in your city it's raining, they will show you some yoga clothing or yoga ads or table tennis photos so that you buy those things. However, if it's sunny and it's a very beautiful day, they will show you outdoor activities pictures, and they will show you people biking and all that stuff. So it's something very common already happening in the industry. So it's just to show you how we can do this in 5 minutes with all this framework. So we are going to do this simple example so that hopefully this doesn't happen to you. So get ready, get ready, get ready. Okay. So in order to create a rule, it's still following the very traditional pattern we have for development in Liferay. We are actually thinking of migrating all this development environment to Gradle in the next weeks, in the next months. But at this point, we wanted to have something ready for the DevCon. So we have this traditional plugins SDK we are going to show you. So in order to create a new rule for the weather, we are going to follow the same pattern we used to follow for creating a new portlet or a new theme or a new hook. You just have the create rule and then the name. So I'm going to do just one here in front of you. And then people who want to come to the workshop, we will do it for each of you. Can you, I don't know if you can see this. Okay, it's a bit bigger now. So I'm here in this audience targeting SDK, so I'm going to do the create rule, weather. First one is the name for the folder, and the second one is the name shown to users. So I just create the rule, and that's it. I just created it, and now I can already deploy it. It won't have any logic yet, but it's already. It automatically creates all the infrastructure you need for creating a rule. Okay, just create rule, and that's all. If you're in a Windows machine, it's create rule.bat instead of sh, and that automatically deploys to my server. So now if I go here to the administration, I add a new user segment, you will see here I have this sample category, which was not there before, and I have this weather rule, okay, which I can already drag and drop, and it doesn't do anything, but as you can see, all the infrastructure is already in place. So I just need now to customize some methods to include my logic there. Okay, so what defines a rule? What I need for my rule? So first I need the behavior. What is it doing, when the users match it or not, all these things. Then I need a UI for configuring the rule. As I showed you, when I drag and drop, I have a small UI, and I may need some language keys to make that localizable for different languages. And so that's all I need. It's very short, it's very small. All these modules are very, very small. So first one, I need a Java class which implements rule. As Jorge showed before, we just need to say arroba add component implements rule, and that will automatically do all the magic for us. We don't need to define any properties file or anything. Then for the UI, you can use any technology. We have decided to go with free market at this version, but you could use any other framework you want. And we are using a hook for the language keys. But again, you could also have other mechanisms if you want. So we have this class that it was automatically created already by our script. I'm going to import it in Eclipse. New project. Rule weather, okay. Okay, so I have already imported this is just doing the create rule. I didn't code anything yet. So I have this, I don't know if you can watch it, source folder. Then I have this BND file, which is the one which has the imports and exports, but it's already created I didn't need to worry about anything. Then I have the UI, which is here, the language keys, which are here, and the Java class. So this is all I have. It's a very small component. So the weather rule by default, it has a lot of methods, and I just need to fill them. So for example, we have the evaluate method, which evaluate if the user belongs or doesn't belong to the user segment. We have the icon, the category, so I will go through those. So the first one is you can see the icon is the one which is shown in the UI, the one here. This puzzle piece is whatever we want. We are using Font Awesome for that. So you could choose actually any icon. You could use any icon of the list. You could also add others, but it's very easy if you just choose one of these. It's easier. So we are going to replace the icon, and then the category, which is in the sample one, we are going to replace these two by this. So now I have the icon sun, which is just a sun for the weather, more appropriate. And I'm going to move this into session attributes because it depends on the session. So it's just a way of grouping it. So deploying that will automatically change the rule to my different category and will make it show up with a different icon. Okay. So as you can see here, I didn't save. I always forget to save in Eclipse. Save, okay. Okay. Okay, so now it's not there in sample. Now it's in session attributes, and it has this weather, this icon, the sun. Okay, very simple. Okay, so the next part is going to be to change the UI. As you've seen here, it just says this is the weather rule. So we are going to make a select to choose the different weathers for the user. Okay, I'm going to use the external service, which is called the Open Weather, and I'm going to use that one. They have an API for showing this information. So let's change first the UI. We are using FreeMarket here, but you could use any other technology. And I'm going to add, this was not synchronized. Let me sync. So I'm going to add this field set here, and this is just a select box with the different weathers. Here. I'm getting some trouble here with Eclipse now. Let me delete it and start this project because there's something wrong here. Open. Okay, is this it? Why not? Okay, now it's fine. Yeah, something cuts there. Okay, so I have the fields now. So it's just a select box for different options of weather. The next part I need is when the user saves the rule, when the user saves the form here, we are going to call a method which is process rule. So we are going to process each of the save rules. So I just have the method here. It's a method very simple, which has a parameter values, which returns all the fields which we have inside of our rule. So I just need to get the select box I just had there, obtain that value, which is called weather. So I just need to do return values get weather, and this will get the value from the weather. Then for the free marker, we need to populate some context, some variables. So we are going to inject the value that the user selected before in the context of free marker. So we just fill this method populate context, in which we obtain the weather first for the request, just in case there was an error and we refresh the page. If there is nothing there, we obtain the value from the saved from the database, and then we just put it in the context. And then the last part is evaluation. We just need to decide if the user matches this user segment, or if he doesn't match this weather. So for the evaluate method, the only thing I do is I obtain the weather from the user. I will tell you how why. And then I obtain the weather I have saved in the database, and I compare. If they are the same, the user matches the user segment, otherwise he doesn't. And in order to obtain the weather from the user. As I told you, I'm going to use this logic, which is just obtaining the city from the profile of the user at this point, and then I'm making a call to external web service, which is the open weather map, and it returns you one of these codes, depending on you send just this code to one city, and they give you the code, and then you can identify it. So I'm just doing that. I'm going to fill the imports. Okay. Okay, so doing this is the whole thing. As part of the workshop later, we will actually change this to obtain the city from the IP of the user instead of obtaining it from the profile. But I didn't want to go into that in this session. Okay, so now it's deployed. Okay, so now in session attributes, if you go to weather, you see now we have this selector here, so you can check if it's sunny, if it's cloudy, or the different weather of the user. And then you can create user segments based on this. So we could have sunny users, and then we'll say sunny. And then you could use this user segment in your UI. And you could do things like here. You could do, okay, so for users, you could do one if the users belong to the following user segment, and here you could have sunny users, then display this different content. And then you will display something different for people who are in a sunny city than for people who are in a cloudy or rainy city, okay? So as you can see, that was very fast, because all these rules are very small modules, are very easy to do, and very simple. As I told you, we're using FreeMarker for the views, but we have this method in the Java class, which is called getFormHTML, in which you can use any technology you want to generate the UI of the rule. We are using FreeMarker, so if you use we have this base rule that you can extend, and that one is using FreeMarker by default, so you have everything already coded for you for extending just one FreeMarker file. But you could do whatever you want. And this is, again, what I just did, so that as a summary of the workflow I followed. Initially, when you have the rule in the list, the first thing you have is the rule category, which is defining in which category it shows. Then you have the icon for the UI, and then the getFormHTML is actually rendering that HTML. Since we are using our FreeMarker, we just needed to fill the populate context method with inject the variables. After that, when the user clicks on save, we process the rule, and we store all the information. And then when the users go to our website, we evaluate the rule. We call these three methods for evaluating if the user belongs or doesn't belong to the user segment. Okay, the next part, I won't do all the examples. I will keep that for the workshop. The next part will be the tracking actions. So you've also seen we have this list of actions that we can track of our users so that we can then measure the engagement. We can listen to them and see how they are interacting with our website. And again, each of those is a plugin that it can also be installed and installed. You can develop more. You can provide more of those in the marketplace or in your app, whatever you want. And as part of the workshop, we'll do a newsletter tracking. So we will create another rule, another tracking action that we can add here for tracking external newsletters in an external service, and you can see which users opened your newsletter or which users clicked on a link of your newsletter. And you could have that as part of a campaign so that you can have different newsletters for a campaign, and then you can see how users interact with your campaigns, for example. Just to give you a visibility of how extensible the framework is and how many things we could build in just 1 hour. So the way it works is very, very similar. We are following the same pattern everywhere. So you will create a tracking action in the same way we did with the rule. And again, we also have one Java class for all the behavior. We have a FreeMarker file for the UI, and we have the language keys. And then we have one specific thing for tracking. Since we need to track something for the newsletter, we are creating a servlet for tracking all the requests to our newsletter, seeing who is reading that. So again, Java class, FreeMarker, and the servlet. The process is pretty much the same. We have the getFormHTML for generating the UI. Then we have, when the user clicks on save, we call this method process tracking action. And then when they visit our website, what we do is we send messages to the analytics service. And this is a new API, new framework that we are providing here that you can also use in other apps if you want, which is the analytics service that you can just send messages to store information about what your users are doing in your website or anywhere else. The way we will do this in the workshop is we will have a transparent image that you have to put in your newsletters. And that transparent image is like a call to our servlet. And then we will intercept that call to store the information in our analytics service. That's the way we are going to build this app in the workshop. So this is something many people were asking me, how can I send messages? How can I track different things? How can I send messages to this analytics service in Liferay? So we have this API both in Java and JavaScript, which you can use to say, okay, my users are doing this. So in your app, for example, you're building an external app in which users buy something. You can say, okay, so when the users click here, they buy this thing, or they are doing this other action here. They are commenting, they are rating, they are doing whatever. So you could use just the send message to the Liferay Analytics with the message object, which has all the information you want to store. All the same in JavaScript. We could do track and whatever. Just a very simple example in JavaScript we have in our app. The first one is for viewing a blog's entry. So we have view, then the class name and the primary key. And this is for clicking on a link. So it's as simple as that. You just, when the users click on the link, we just send this information, and then we can store all this and then have metrics, reports, and everything we want for this. Also in the workshop, we will also track the clicks on the different links on the newsletter. So you can see people clicked on the links and see how many people click on the different links of our newsletter. And the last part of the app is the reports. We're actually thinking of integrating with another tools, different tools for generating more beautiful reports and reports that can be built from the user administration. But at this point, we have these tools for creating reports. You can use any HTML. So this is just a visualization we have with this table and this graph. But you could use any HTML, any jQuery plugin, any tool you want for building all these visualizations of all the analytics service that we have. You can have reports, as I showed you in the demo, for user segments and for campaigns. And in this situation, in this workshop, what we are going to do is we are going to build a report for the newsletters. Since we are tracking a lot of newsletters, and we can track if users click on the links and all these things, we are going to make a different special report for showing all your newsletters so that you can see if you are getting more engagement or less engagement with each newsletter, so that you can measure how effective your newsletters are. And that's what we will be doing in the workshop. The way of doing it is, again, exactly the same as in the other part. So once you learn to do one rule, you can do pretty much the whole thing in this app, all these extension points. You create a report following the same way. And then the logic it has is a bit more complicated. You may be wondering, how do you store all the information about users, all this analytics service, right? If you have million users, it's a lot of information, and that can be too much for your database. So for Liferay 7, we're actually going to have different ways of storage so that we can store all this information in NoSQL databases in different ways. But for 6.2, we wanted to keep things simple. So the way it works right now is that we store all this information, and daily we just clean up this database so that it doesn't get too big. So this means that every day before we clean up the database, we let every report know so that they can come, grab all the information from the last day and store it in their own tables, which are like a summary. They have all the information about what happened in every day. So that's the way we have to do it right now. Every day we get there, we get what happened in the last day, and then we store it in our internal tables, and then we can display that information in our UI. So I will go through all these examples later in the workshop. So whoever is interested in all this and want to get this done, will actually follow all the steps, and we'll do all these exercises in this workshop. Something else also, all these apps, since it's following all the OSGI patterns, those are the main extension points that we are providing. Like every app can update it in the marketplace, but also all the implementations of our rules are also OSGI modules, which means that can be extended with other apps which have other OSGI modules. So as you said, somebody said, the implementation of the geolocation API, for example, the geolocation rule, or the implementation of the age of all these rules can also be changed to have different logic, just deploying different plugins in your app server. So it's very simple to extend anything of the app following these patterns. So thank you very much. I think we have time for questions, right? And otherwise, we have 2 hours workshop afterwards in room C with Eduardo and Eudaldo, who will be there to help you.
Any questions, please?
So what is it if I want to use that information in my own portlet, like what user group the user belongs to, like developer or another group?
You want to use that in a rule?
Not in a rule, but in my own portlet, so that I can implement my own logic in my own portlet.
So the user segments are an object in the request. So every time that you have a portlet, you can obtain the user segments from the request.
Okay, thank you.
That's what you meant? Okay.
Exactly. Thanks.
I thought you meant that you also wanted to have some information in your own services, and then you wanted to create some rules based on those services, and that's also possible. But
any other questions?
Hi. Can we also use Maven artifacts to build the rules and track actions and so on?
So not yet. We haven't invested a lot in this SDK. We just have done it actually for this workshop so that we can have people create all these things. We're actually thinking of moving to Gradle. So we didn't invest more in all this SDK and Mavenize it and everything. So I'm not sure we will actually do it. We probably will invest all those efforts in moving all this to Gradle.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? If there are no more questions, then thank you very much, Julio, for both of your presentations.
Thank you for coming.